listening to the NFL Draft Bible Podcast Network, part of Sports Illustrated, giving you daily NFL Draft, Dynasty, and Devy Fantasy Football podcasts.
Class is in session. Welcome into this episode of the Draft Seminar presented by Sports Illustrated's NFL Draft Bible Podcast Network. I'm your host, Matt Hicks, the FF Educator, joined by my co-host, as always, John Lobb, the Gridiron Scholar. And we're talking about Kyle Pitts. John, one of the headliners of this year's fantasy football rookie draft season. I'm excited to talk about him, and I am sure you are as well.
Absolutely, my friend. And we know the NFL is a copycat league. And when you look at the last 2 years, the dominance of Travis Kelce and helping the Kansas City Chiefs get to the Super Bowl. And then 2 years ago with George Kittle, being the main cog in that 49ers offense. Teams are looking for that next great tight end. And Matt, Kyle Pitts is the next great prospect. And it looks like he's going to be the next great NFL tight end. When you watch the film, this man is special. In high school, he was a 4-star recruit. 2018 Under Armour All-America game and 2017 Under Armour All-America selection. Just a prolific high school career. He's spent 3 years in Gainesville with the Florida Gators. But last year, Matt, he became a star. He was first-team All-American, first-team All-SEC, and he was the John Mackey Award winner, and he was a Biletnikoff finalist. Do you know how hard it is for a tight end to be a Biletnikoff finalist? But that's how good he was. 43 receptions, 770 yards, and 12 touchdowns. And Matt, he averaged 17.9 yards per catch. Just an amazing season by a tight end. It was so spectacular. He finished in the top 10 in Heisman voting. He was the first tight end in 43 years, my friends. 43 years. Just amazing. He set a school single-season touchdown mark for touchdowns. And over the past 2 seasons, he has 4 games over 100 yards receiving. And Matt, we watch a lot of college football. The modern college offense does not employ the tight end in the passing game a lot. So the fact that this man had 400-yard games is simply spectacular. And he had a good sophomore season in 2019. He was All-SEC, AP, and coach's first team, Walter Camp Player of the Year semifinalist. When he concluded his career at Florida, he was the all-time leader for receiving yards by a tight end. Matt, he is going to be most likely the next great tight end in the NFL. What does your film study tell us about Kyle Pitts, my friend?
Well, it's a really interesting film study, John, and I can't say I've done one very similar to watching Kyle Pitts. And actually, John, when I evaluated him as an athlete, because that is truly what he is. And I think he's going to be deployed in a variety of roles in the NFL. And it starts here, John, with the athleticism, agile, fluid player. His vertical ability is really strong. His elusiveness really improved in 2020. I felt in his 2020 tape, he was a lot more comfortable moving around the field, especially in space. Catching has to be at the top of that as well, John. He has tremendous hands. He tracks the ball really well through the air. He holds on really well through contact. You can see at times with Kyle Trask throwing balls, oftentimes off target, he goes and he reaches out and he snags balls, sometimes making it look like it was actually on target, really kind of flashing his hands and getting them back in. His 2020 tape, I thought, also really improved in his consistency in hands. And when that contested catch ability, he's got a nice catch radius behind him. Now, John, for a tight end, he's a really good route runner. All right, I think he actually runs a pretty diverse route tree. Florida asked him to do a pretty good amount. He's got a good slant route, which is not a common route right for tight ends, but he's got a good slant route. He runs a nice out route as well. And he also has a fly route, John, that will contest with some of the guys along the boundary at the wide receiver position that we're scouting. So I really like his hands and his route running as well in speed, John. He moves around the field. He's a very fast player. He gets off the line of scrimmage quickly. He's fast in short space, and he has really good acceleration downfield. I have him projected to be a weekly starter for fantasy football rosters. He absolutely has the ability to translate into a staple of your fantasy football roster week in and week out, similar to some of the names that you mentioned to kick off the show. Now, we've talked about him. Let's talk about and let's look at some of this tape. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I can't wait because I enjoyed watching him on film throughout the year.
Absolutely, man. And let's flip it on. And all of our tape is provided by Brandon Lejeune, Devy Deep Dive on YouTube and Twitter. Yeah, absolutely, man. He goes up and gets that ball right there. And look at that contested catchability. Look at that body control there along the sideline. That's absolutely fantastic. And we're seeing a little bit of that slant route here against South Carolina.
Absolutely. He runs a great slant route. He breaks off. When he's determined to break it off, he is sharp and he is there. He's on it, Matt.
And up and over against Texas A&M. I thought Texas A&M was one of Kyle Trask's least accurate games, and Kyle Pitts still found the end zone a couple times because of that. Look at this underthrown ball, John. He reacts to it very nicely against Georgia and goes up and beats that defender.
Matt, he's a tight end. He's running these out and ups from inline position. And look, he's getting about, 20, 25 yards downfield against SEC corners and linebackers? That's just amazing athleticism.
Absolutely, John. As you could see there against that Georgia defensive back, he was almost totally blinded to the ball. He really had to feel that ball and understand where it was going to be in order to catch it. And then he flips on against Kentucky, and he flips on the burners, John. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. And he's got the long strides, but he's fast. And then you just notice the long arms and the big hands. He looks like his hands are monstrous, right? When you see him just snatch that ball right out of the air. He's got long fingers, big hands.
You love to see the tape, John. Talk to us about the production metrics.
Yeah, my production model likes him. And remember, it's a little different for a tight end than a wide receiver. The thresholds I'm looking for are less. But he pops. He would be a tremendous wide receiver prospect. But he is a tight end. And Matt, you know what's fascinating? He is a hybrid. We keep talking about him having wide receiver athletic skills. But, he lined up the vast majority as an inline tight end. I think like over 70% of his routes was when he was lining up as an inline tight end. Ladies and gentlemen, he's a tight end, but he's just so good as a route runner with his athletic ability. And look at some of these numbers. 100 career receptions, 1,492 yards. He's averaging nearly 15 yards a reception for a tight end. We saw him get down the field 20, 25 yards on outside the hash marks. That's impressive for a tight end. It's one thing to run down the seam, and we love that with Gronk and Kittle and Kelsey. This man is getting 20, 30 yards downfield outside the hash mark. 18 touchdowns in his career. And look at this, as a tight end. Team aerial dominator on a team with Trayvon Grimes and with Kadarius Toney. He had 17% team aerial dominator for the Gators and a 64% catch rate. The young man is special. 6'5", 239 pounds. He's an elite athletic playmaker with great height, long arms, and big hands. But what I like about him most, savvy, and he's a very good route runner with excellent ball skills. Matt, we were talking about it. Great body control. He can contort himself in the air, and he fights for the football. He just plucks it out of the air. And Matt, you can get this young man. He can run that slant pattern right in front of the safety in the NFL in the red zone. He is going to be a real problem because he can attack your safeties, which then opens up your wide receivers on the outside or a running back sneaking behind him. He is just an unbelievable prospect at the tight end position, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely love to see it, John. And thank you for listening to this episode of the Draft Seminar presented by Sports Illustrated's NFL Draft Bible Podcast Network. You can put down those pens because this lesson is over. But if you enjoyed this episode, we would appreciate you subscribing on YouTube or your favorite podcast provider. If you have not already, please give it a thumbs up or a 5-star review.